4.6 million unemployment claims since the start of the pandemic. That's over 22 times the workload of an average year for our staff. The weekly high for unemployment claims during the Great Recession was 77,000. The total was outpaced for 6 consecutive weeks in the beginning of the pandemic, hitting a high of 390,000 in 1 week. Before the pandemic, we were receiving approximately 5,000 claims a week, and while initial claims have slowed, we still receive double that with more than 10,500 claim applications just last week. Since March 15th of 2020, we have paid over $30 billion in benefits to over 2.3 million workers. The largest volume of work the agency is currently processing is identity verifications and a queue of complex claims under managerial review. Every claimant in managerial review has been contacted to provide additional information to process their claim. This includes fact-finding, additional ID verification information, or wage verification information, or we have been able to approve or deny their claim. Upon receipt of the documents, we will complete the review of the outstanding claims and approve or deny those claims. With every single weekly certification, in addition to new applications, new issues arise that the agency has to work. Last week, our adjudication team processed 126,000 new issues. Through process improvements, increased trained staff, and a lot of hard work, any non-monetary or identity verification issue that arise on new weekly claims are now being completed within 21 days, the federal timeliness standard. To handle the unprecedented demand, we have continued to make improvements throughout the agency. We have increased capacity, improved workflow and other internal systems, and reduced red tape to meet the unprecedented level of claims that have been filed since the pandemic began. We've more than quintupled customer-facing staff. Before the pandemic, UIA had approximately 650 total staff. Now, nearly 3,000 UIA team members are helping claimants. This includes answering phones through the call center, making proactive calls, requesting information, answering questions online, solving technical issues, and adjudicating claims. In October, we launched a new phone appointment system for complex claims that need one-on-one attention. Since then, we have assisted over 115,000 claimants through these appointments to date. The agency has also made a concerted effort to thoroughly train staff, and our capacity to resolve complex issues has increased dramatically. Unfortunately, for unemployed workers, this historic demand was coupled with criminal attacks on unemployment systems nationwide. Federal law enforcement warned of an international criminal ring exploiting the COVID-19 crisis to commit large-scale fraud against state unemployment programs. The U.S. Department of Labor also warned that the pandemic created a perfect storm for criminal activity across the country, and nearly every state has been a victim of large and small-scale fraud schemes. To combat these criminal attacks, UIA helped establish Attorney General Nessel's Unemployment Fraud Task Force, where we are working with our state and federal partners who are using all available tools under Michigan law to identify and prosecute fraudsters. We've successfully enhanced and bolstered our fraud detection mechanisms. Michigan was one of the first states in the nation to connect our system with the National Integrity Data Hub, and we've utilized multiple cross matches with national and state databases. I want to show you a few examples of what our team has to comb through every single day in order to weed out the criminals. These criminals have become incredibly brazen in the attempt to verify their identities by calling legislative and congressional offices, as well as submitting fake documents. Criminals have also developed sophisticated phishing schemes across the nation by mimicking official emails, social media pages, and even government websites to obtain confidential information from workers. As we find these fraudulent activities, we work with our partners to shut them down. Both UIA and Attorney General Nessel's office regularly inform claimants and the public to guard their personal information to prevent identity theft. Okay, so on the screen are two examples that we have to show you today. On your left, if you can see that, that is a picture of John Krasinski, Jim from The Office, that has been photoshopped onto that ID, which is indication of fraud. There were other issues with that claim, but just to show you what they will do. If you just looked at that, you wouldn't know that that wasn't a fraudulent document. Arnita, who is our passport on the other side, if you look at it, and I'm not sure how closely you can see it, but there's no last name associated with the passport, only a first and a middle name. The signature up here on the top, which I'm pointing at and you can't see, is a computer generated name. It is not a handwritten signature like you would normally do on your passport. And again, there's other issues that were elevated with this claim. But as you can see, if you are not used to working with these documents, you may have determined that that was an okay passport, and it's not. The next one I want to show you is a far more sophisticated case study. So this is Crystal. Crystal is an example of the web our investigators in the fraud unit must wade through. Her claim was never paid and has been flagged for all 48 of her certifications, but she continues to try and prove that she is a real person. She has contacted congressional offices several times and has sent 9 web notices. Our team performs what is called a spiral or cluster analysis, where we investigate all aspects of the claims that were filed. This specific one has 30 other claims based on a physical address in Michigan, which is a hotel. You can see in the blurred cluster photo how many other people's claims it touches. The big blue dots are people who are being impacted by these identity theft claims. She has an in-state physical address associated with those 30 claims, an out-of-state mailing address in Georgia. She filed the claim September 10th of last year and backdated it to March of 2020, which is permissible under federal law. She has no wages in Michigan. But we have to look at all 48 of her certifications for all of these claims. And then each of those blue dots, as you can see, have spirals that go out from them that we have to investigate. So some of these are real people who've had their identity stolen. And so we have to go through all of this to try to weed out who the real claimants are and who are the fraudsters and make sure that none of them get paid. And this happens every day. So just wanted to give you a sense of what's happening. So there's 30 claims. These victims are all over the country and in Michigan. And so we just wanted to give you a sense of it's not just as easy as looking at an ID and saying, oh, that's false, so we're going to deny the claim. Some of these claims become very, very complex and integrated into many other parts of other claims. And so we just need you to see what we do every day. While the UI system has been impacted by these imposter claims, there is clearly an impact on identity theft victims. Unemployment benefits are taxable, and the UIA routinely issues 1099-G forms to claimants. The difference this year is that with historic claim numbers, many ID theft victims may have received a 1099-G form based on fraudulent activity. Michigan, along with many other states, had conversations with the IRS seeking flexibility on the issuance of these forms to limit the impact on victims but the IRS would not provide that flexibility, and in fact reiterated that failure to distribute would result in hefty fines of $1,000 per form. Knowing this, the agency mailed 1.8 million 1099-G forms and included written instructions to assist victims to report ID theft and IRS guidance on tax filing as an ID victim. And on your screen is the pages, and we can make sure that you have that, of the IRS guidance for folks.
All right, well, thank you, Director, for that presentation. We do have our other member here now, so we're going to go ahead, put you on hold real brief. We're going to go through some votes. So we have the FOIA LARA bills before us today, good bipartisan support. And I don't know if you guys saw over the weekend, there's actually an article saying that the U of M president was trying to get around FOIA, and he asked, if we delete the email, does that not get FOIA'd? Literally, this is the president of U of M. I assure you, these bills still require, even if you delete the email, it still has to be reported. So with that, we're going to move through these rather quickly. I need a motion to report House Bill 4383 with recommendation. Rep. O'Malley moves. Madam Clerk, can you take the vote?
On the motion to report, Chair Johnson?
Yes.
Representatives Altman?
Yes.
Whittinga?
Yes.
Riley?
Yes.
O'Malley?
Yes.
Wozniak?
Yes.
Brixey?
Yes.
LeGrand?
Yes.
Young?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 9 yeas, no nays, and no pass. With that, the bill is reported with recommendation.
Bill is reported. All right, with that, we need a motion to report House Bill 4384 with recommendation. Representative Altman so moves. Madam Clerk, can you take the vote?
On the motion to report, Chair Johnson?
Yes.
Representatives Altman?
Yes.
Whittinga?
Yes.
Riley?
Yes.
O'Malley?
Yes.
Wozniak?
Yes.
Brixey?
Yes.
LeGrand? Young?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 9 yeas, no nays, and no pass. With that, the bill is reported with recommendation.
Bill is reported. Next, we need a motion to report House Bill 4385 with recommendation. Representative Riley moves. Madam Clerk, can you take the vote?
On the motion to report, Chair Johnson?
Yes.
Representatives Altman?
Yes.
Whittinga?
Yes.
Riley?
Yes.
O'Malley?
Yes.
Wozniak?
Yes.
Brixey?
Yes.
LeGrand?
Yes.
Young?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 9 yeas, no nays, and no pass. That bill is reported with recommendation.
House Bill 4385 is reported. All right, next, a motion to report House Bill 4386 with recommendation. Representative Hoytinga so moves. Madam Clerk, can you please take the vote?
On the motion to report, Chair Johnson?
Yes.
Representatives Altman?
Yes.
Whittinga?
Yes.
Riley?
Yes.
O'Malley?
Yes.
Wozniak?
Yes.
Brixey?
Yes.
LeGrand?
Yes.
Young?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 9 yeas, no nays, and no pass. With that, the bill is reported with recommendation.
Motion passes. Next up, we need a motion to report House Bill 4387 with recommendation. So moved by Representative Wozniak. Madam Clerk, can you take the vote?
On the motion to report, Chair Johnson?
Yes.
Representatives Altman?
Yes.
Whittinga?
Yes.
Riley?
Yes.
O'Malley?
Yes.
Wozniak?
Yes.
Brixey?
Yes.
LeGrand?
Yes.
Young?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 9 yeas, no nays, and no pass. With that, the bill is reported with recommendation.
Motion passes. Next up, we need a motion to pass House Bill 4388 with recommendation. Representative O'Malley so moves. Madam Clerk, can you take the vote?
On the motion to report, Chair Johnson?
Yes.
Representatives Altman?
Yes.
Whittinga?
Yes.
Riley?
Yes.
O'Malley?
Yes.
Wozniak?
Yes.
Brixey?
Yes.
LeGrand?
Yes.
Young?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 9 yeas, no nays, no pass. With that, the bill is reported with recommendation.
Motion passes. Next, I need a motion to move House Bill 4389 with recommendation. So moved by Representative O'Malley. Madam Clerk, can you take the vote?
On the motion to report, Chair Johnson?
Yes.
Representatives Altman?
Yes.
Whittinga?
Yes.
Riley?
Yes.
O'Malley?
Yes.
Wozniak?
Yes.
Brixey?
Yes.
LeGrand?
Yes.
Young?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 9 yeas, no nays, and no pass. With that, the bill is reported with recommendation.
Motion passes. Next, I need a motion to report House Bill 4390 with recommendation. Representative Altman so moves. Madam Clerk, can you take the vote?
On the motion to report, Chair Johnson?
Yes.
Representatives Altman?
Yes.
Whittinga?
Yes.
Riley?
Yes.
O'Malley?
Yes.
Wozniak?
Yes.
Brixey?
Yes.
LeGrand? Young?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 9 yeas, no nays, and no pass. With that, the bill is reported with recommendation.
Motion passes. All right, next up, we need to adopt the sub, H1 for 4391. This is going to bring all the Press Association on board. So with that, we need a motion to adopt the sub H1 for House Bill 4391. Representative LeGrand so moves. Madam Clerk, can you take the vote?
On the motion to adopt the H1, Chair Johnson?
Yes.
Representatives Altman?
Yes.
Whittinga?
Yes.
Riley?
Yes.
O'Malley?
Yes.
Wozniak?
Yes.
Brixey?
Yes.
LeGrand?
Yes.
Young?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 9 yeas, no nays, and no pass. With that, substitute H1 is adopted.
With that, we need a motion to report with recommendation House Bill 4391 as substituted H1. Representative Riley so moves. Madam Clerk, will you take the vote?
On the motion to report, Chair Johnson?
Yes.
Representatives Outman?
Yes.
Whitenga?
Yes.
Riley?
Yes.
O'Malley?
Yes.
Wozniak?
Here.
Birksey?
Yes.
LeGrand?
Yes.
Young?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 9 yeas, no nays, no pass, with that the bill is reported with recommendation as substituted.
Motion passes. Next, we need a motion to report House Bill 4392 as recommended. And Representative Young so moves. Madam Clerk, take the vote.
On the motion to report, Chair Johnson?
Yes.
Representatives Outman?
Yes.
Whitenga?
Yes.
Riley?
Yes.
O'Malley?
Yes.
Wozniak?
Yes.
Birksey?
Yes.
LeGrand?
Yes.
Young?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 9 yeas, no nays, no pass, with that the bill is reported with recommendation.
Motion passes. All right, I got a little out of order there, so I'm going to read this in. I don't think it's going to change your votes, but Sean Hammond with the Michigan Environmental Council does support the bill, not wishing to speak. All right, next up, we do have House Bill 4022. This is one dealing with, yes, Rep. LeGrand.
Were you ever a farm auctioneer?
I have no idea what you just said.
Were you ever a farm auctioneer?
After this, I think I will. All right, so next is 4022. This is the bill, the Rep. Berman bill to display salaries online for state employees. So that need a motion to report House Bill 4022 with recommendation. Rep. O'Malley so moves. Madam Clerk, take the vote.
On the motion to report, Chair Johnson?
Yes.
Representatives Outman?
Yes.
Whitenga?
Yes.
Riley?
Yes.
O'Malley?
Yes.
Wozniak?
Yes.
Birksey?
No.
LeGrand?
Yes.
Young?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 8 yeas, 1 nay, and no pass, with that the bill is reported with recommendation.
Motion passes. All right, next we have 4161. We need to adopt an H1 sub. 4164. Thank you for catching that. So we do need to adopt a sub. This sub extends the time frame for enactment, as well as opening this up from not just attorneys, but the general population. So this is just for the sub. So with that, I need a motion to adopt the sub H1 for House Bill 4164. Motion made by Rep. Outman.
On the motion to adopt the H1, Chair Johnson?
Yes.
Representative Outman?
Yes.
Whitenga?
Yes.
Riley?
Yes.
O'Malley?
Yes.
Wozniak?
Yes.
Birksey?
No.
LeGrand?
Yes.
Young?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 8 yeas, 1 nay, and no pass, with that the substitute H1 is adopted.
All right, so I'm going to read in some cards on this bill. Michigan Municipal League opposes the bill, does not wish to speak. MAC, Michigan Association of Counties, opposes the bill, not wishing to speak. Bill Zagman, Michigan Association of County Clerks, opposes the bill, not wishing to speak. Tom Boyd with Scale opposes the bill, not wishing to speak. I just want to say a couple comments here. This is something we had 3 weeks ago in our committee. I said I was interested in voting it out soon. We had conversation with Scale. I'll make sure I give them credit. We took this up again last week, and I made it very clear we're going to vote it out this week. I said if you have issues, get them to us by Friday. Instead, I'm getting stuff yesterday for the first time. That's not how this process is going to work. And so I'm going to be very firm on this one. We are open to amendments. We are always open to the process, but you can't wait till the last minute. So with that, I believe Representative Birksey has some comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the number of municipal organizations and associations that are opposed to this bill clearly indicate that there are quite a few problems with it. And while I am definitely very interested in seeing us move to electronic filing, and many of the positives for this bill were accurately outlaid during our testimony, I think the negatives and the impacts and the practical implications of implementing it have not been addressed. Having served on judiciary for appropriations last session, I understand that the committee is going through their own filing process, my file, and one of the challenges that we face is when we have a patchwork of different court systems, which we have in our great state of Michigan. They all have different types of software, they have different types of hardware, and the two types of systems do not talk to each other. So the timeline that
We have the director that's waiting to speak here, so could you keep your comments narrowly tailored here?
I
You can say
am
whole background.
addressing the bill. I am addressing my comments and my concerns on the bill. And I have a right to do that. before I vote on the bill. So given the timeline challenges that have been indicated by SCAO, and given the organizations who control the electronic filing and the known discrepancies and inadequacies of the IT elements of this, I'll be voting no.
Thank you. Your comments are noted. With that, need a motion to report House Bill 4164 with recommendation. Motion so moved by Rep. Outman. Madam Clerk, take the vote.
On the motion to report, Chair Johnson?
Yes.
Representatives Outman?
Yes.
Whitengeld?
Yes.
Riley?
Yes.
O'Malley?
Yes.
Wozniak?
Yes.
Birksey?
No.
LeGrand?
Yes.
Young?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 8 yeas, 1 nay, and no pass. With that, the bill is reported with recommendation as substituted.
Motion is passed. All right, with that, we are through the voting. Director Olson, are you still on the line? Did we lose the director? All right, there you are. All right, so are you prepared to answer questions at this point in time?
I am.
All right, so I think Vice Chair Outman has a question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Olson, what occurred leading up to the resignation of Steve Gray, and why was he offered $85,000 to keep quiet and drop any sort of legal claims?
I'm sorry, I only heard part of the question. Could you repeat it?
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you what occurred leading up to the resignation of former Director Steve Gray, and why was he offered $85,000 to keep quiet and drop any sort of legal claims?
I came in after that process occurred. I don't know any of the background on it, and it does not help me pay one claimant today, so I don't have any information on that.
Well, let me ask you this. Would you take $85,000 in a confidentiality separation agreement? Do you think that's an ethical use of taxpayer dollars?
It's a contractual issue with HR, and I'm not going to comment.
So you won't comment on whether you would take that money or not?
I'm not in that situation, so I'm not going to comment.
Okay, just curious on your thoughts. I think these sort of things are everything that's wrong within our political system, and I think our citizens deserve better. So I just was curious to see your thoughts on this. Thank you for your response.
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of troubled by this. I mean, that's a yes or no question. This is obviously this is all over the news. You clearly are very well aware of this. It's the former director, and you can't say with certainty if you would turn down one of these hush fund settlements?
I've indicated that I am not in that situation, and I do not have an answer for you today.
Okay. Well, I do want to, all right, we'll move on past that one. So, how often do you talk with the governor?
When I need to.
And how often is that? I mean, I would say that's probably you probably need to a lot because there's a lot of issues going on. We're just trying to figure out what is the communication going on. So how often is it?
I don't know. Like I said, when I need to.
When was the last time you met with the governor?
Maybe a month ago.
The unemployment is one of the biggest issues in our state, and the director is only meeting with the governor a month ago?
I'm sorry. I'm the director of the agency. She hired me to do the job of managing the agency, and that's what I'm doing.
So when you met with the governor, obviously there's been a lot of issues here. Did she make some recommendations as to some changes that could be made to try to fix some of these issues?
She relies on me to implement any recommendations that are coming through. So, that's my job, is to determine what the changes that need to occur in the agency are and then implement those changes.
So the governor's taking a hands-off approach and is letting the director handle everything with UIA.
That's your language, not mine.
Well,
She
put it
expects
in your
me
words,
to do
then.
my job, sir.
Okay, so, but she is not, this is obviously, should come as no surprise to anyone that the unemployment agency has been one of the, biggest issues we've faced through this COVID, through this last year. And if you are in charge of the executive branch, you're in charge of executing the law, one of those parts being the unemployment agency, I guess I would expect that the person at the top would be more involved when there's this many significant issues. I mean, I'm just trying to imagine if I was in that position, I would probably have a whole list of recommendations of saying, hey, you guys need to try these different things, but that's not occurring.
As I indicated, it's my job to determine what the changes that are necessary at the agency. And if I needed assistance to make those changes occur, I would obviously make that call. I do keep the governor's office apprised of what's happening, but I don't need to talk to the governor every day to do my job.
Not suggesting every day, but maybe more than once a month. Rep. Hoytinga, I believe you have something?
Yes, and the majority of the phone calls coming into our offices are about unemployment. And this will be my one and only opportunity, instead of asking you a gotcha question, because I have thousands of claims in my office. If I can help one constituent right now who has been waiting for almost a year, and I'm going to be as quick as I can, Mr. Chair. This will most likely be my one and only chance to speak directly to the person who may be able to help me. This particular constituent applied for unemployment over 11 months ago. He and his father's business were shut down and remain under tight restrictions to this day because they are in the hospitality industry. They are the most reputable and respected people in their community. They pay taxes, and they pay a lot of taxes. I want to give you the timeline and see if you can help me figure this out. They applied over 11 months ago, no response after 90 days. They then contacted my office. We submitted a constituent UIA portal claim, no response, 90 days. Constituent was finally able to get a hold of the UIA and was told there were no further actions needed on his account, and he could expect payment within 90 days. No money, no response within those 90 days. He contacted the UIA office again and was told he needed to submit an income verification for 2019. He submitted it. No response. Another 90 days. So we're pushing a year now. My office then escalated his claim. No response. On my way to Lansing this week, early in the morning, I received a text from him, and I have it, saying that the UIA has finally contacted him, but you are now requesting what appears to be a business plan and proof that he intends to stay in business. Are you kidding me? I will verify personally that these people are in business. I will verify it as state representative. But unless this governor gets off her throne and allows these people to work, or you guys get these people help, they are not going to be open. I am infuriated that the governor and you are not in constant contact on a weekly basis, trying to figure out how to help these people. Finally, when this letter went viral on my social media, so here's my one and only question. A comment was said, contact Senator Hertel's office. He's able to get these shoved through faster than anyone else. Was favoritism played when legislators were submitting their requests? Because we kept hearing that repeatedly. And can you please help my constituent? I have all of his information here. I'll do anything it takes. If you can just please help this one constituent of thousands that have contacted my office. Thank you.
I'm going to let Todd Cook respond to that.
Sure. No, I appreciate the question, Representative, and I understand the frustration that comes with some cases. And while the vast majority of folks who applied for UIA, as indicated in the director's remarks, are getting benefits, we know that anyone who isn't is still a concern of ours and someone we have to work on. And certainly, we don't know the specifics, and unfortunately, many times when it comes to UIA cases, it's on a case-by-case basis and individual circumstances. So I don't have specific knowledge of the case you are referring to, but certainly want to be supportive and helpful on that in terms of resolving that. I think the the director and others have been pretty public in their comments of making sure that everyone who's entitled to benefits receive every dollar of benefits. We know that the impact of fraud that's played on the system. We know the impact of getting these new federal programs have come and running. In terms of the CRT system, which is a system we use to help legislator offices resolve constituent claims, I know at times that people have concerns about this. I can be very clear that, whether they come from the House or the Senate, whether they come from Democrats or Republicans, they're all constituents of the state of Michigan. We work hard to get through all of those claims to the best of their ability. We certainly understand the frustration and don't blame people for being frustrated at times. But in terms of how we work the cases, in terms of how we assign things, at no point whatsoever does anything come into play other than the facts of the case and the time in which we received it. I know that at times there are certain groups believe that other groups get preferential treatment. That's not the case. That's not how we work. And I think that's one of the things that we've been very clear on is that we're trying to help everybody who deserves these benefits, who's entitled to these benefits. And just like I said, I'm sorry for the trouble that this shouldn't happen. We can certainly follow up and get you more information and work through the issues that they may be having.
Representative Young.
Good morning, and thank you all for being here. This is absolutely the hot topic, and so I'm grateful for your time today. A couple of questions, and just like my good colleague mentioned, I have an exact same case, just about it. It's just the truth. It's not partisan. It's just people, and that's why we're here, because we care about people. And so my question has to do with the timeline. I'm about solutions. What do you all need to reduce the timeline, how long it takes to actually process something? And then with that, I also would like to know, because the constituent that I talked to just this morning before coming to committee, he had the exact same case, and he's a small business owner. And every few months, he's getting asked for additional information. So the question that I have is, can we just get the list on the first contact? What information do you all require at one time? I know it's tricky. I know you guys have been navigating, because like you spelled out for us that there are a number of different nuances, things that are new to your department. But can we get a list of everything you think you might need from somebody on the first or second communication with residents, so that will reduce the amount of time that it takes for you guys to get busy processing these claims?
I mean, the timeliness issue is one that obviously we have a backlog, and we are working through that backlog, which is why I said that, the managerial review queue, everybody has been touched in that queue. And we have either requested additional information, because what the information they gave us was not enough for us to make a determination. And we could have denied the claim, but our preference is that we give the claimant an opportunity to give us additional information that would make us potentially be able to approve their claim for payment. And so, we require 14 days for them to return. But with the mail right now, the way it is, we give them longer than the 14 days, so that we're not closing a case through no fault of their own, because the postal system has not sent it in or given it to us as quickly as we might have normally expected it. So in terms of timeliness, we continue to allow people to have additional time. And under the new federal guidelines, we have to require wage verification, and we are giving people who have a current claim 90 days to submit that. And for new claimants, they have 21 days to submit that. And so that's a big chunk of it. As you saw with the fraud, we have to look at every piece of identification carefully. And so we ask them to submit information. We try not to ask for more than we need, but sometimes what they send does not give us the information that we need to have. And so we ask them again to provide additional information that would allow us to say yes to their claim. Our position is that we want to get to yes on every claim that we can if they're eligible, and not have to deny somebody the needed funds that they're looking for. But we need to have that information.
Right.
So,
thank you, Derek. So you said that you're trying not to ask for more information, but it sounds to me like you always need more information. So I'm just trying to figure out,
Sure.
can we come up with a way? You guys at this point know what you need. If you're dealing with a small business, there's no reason to wait a year before you ask for a business plan. I'm just trying to understand this. I'm here about solutions and the way we can streamline process.
Yeah, no, I understand that, Representative, and I think that's what we're all here is to help get solutions. So I appreciate that. To put in context some of the requirements, some of these requirements that we have to do come in context of the fact that we have to be in compliance with the U.S. Department of Labor as well as the state of Michigan. Originally, when the PUA program was set up, so this is the program for people who are non-W-2 wage earners, so small business owners who are self-employed or contract workers who get paid through a 1099-G system. Initially, when that PUA system was set up and allowed them to collect benefits, because of the original CARES Act, there wasn't a requirement that they provide documentation. The testimony was a self-attestation that they were who they were and that they were employed through the means that they were. Later on, the USDOL made some changes based on activities they saw throughout the state and throughout the country, I should say, in regards to documentation. And so later on, they asked us to provide additional information in all these claims. This is one of the things we've gotten into the managerial review process. And so those people who came into the system and then backdated more than 4 weeks, which was their right under the federal law, DOL required us to go through a managerial review of every single one of those cases before they're paid out. And so that backlog there was in fact because of changes in federal process that we had to adhere to. So I understand the frustration that people have in terms of documentation and what's needed when, especially when people believe they've submitted the correct information to us at the time that they're asked for it. There are times in which, because of our federal regulators asking for additional things to happen, that we have to ask for more more information. And I think one of the things that we can get better at is communicating that to claimants like your constituent, and let them understand the reason why we're asking for this additional information is either because it's a new requirement of the federal government that we have to adhere to, or B, it's additional information to help us get to a determination. Clearly, the most frustrating thing for any of these people is to not have an answer of where they are. And so that documentation allows us to process their claim, give them a fair review, and allow us to move forward in a way that, to Director's point, allows everyone who's entitled to benefits receive those benefits.
Does that answer your question, Rep? Okay. Well, as close as they can, I guess. I think you put it very well. You said this isn't politics, this is people. We probably have a lot of disagreements on unemployment policy, but we have the system that's out there, and we need to make sure that we're doing the right thing here. And it's not happening. Representative Riley.
Thank you. In an effort to get the people that are the fraudsters, as you said, there's constituents of mine I know that have gotten caught with, and they've been accused of being fraudsters, I guess, because they're asked to give any garnishment letters, so they have to pay back these funds that they've paid out. And so then they try to get through to your office. They have a hard time. They call us, and we get it resolved. And in the end, they were not fraudsters. And so I guess my first question would be, what are we doing to stop this practice of catching people in the net that are actually legitimately getting the dollars that they should be receiving?
So I'm assuming that somebody got an overpayment letter that indicated they'd been overpaid on their claim, is what you're saying.
Well,
so,
they received dollars, and they were told that you were not supposed to receive these dollars, when in actuality they did.
Right.
They were supposed to receive them.
Yep, that's called an overpayment. And so our system automatically generates letters when there's been a determination that there's been an overpayment. And so we are in the process now of, we will be stopping overpayment letters so that we can determine if because usually what it is that they potentially are in a program that they shouldn't be in, and that we need to move them to another program. So in order to give them their protest and appeal rights, we have to issue a determination that indicates that there's an overpayment. So it makes it very confusing for people, because then they'll potentially get another letter that says, okay, you can now apply for this because that's the program you should have been in. And so it is confusing, but we have to maintain their ability to protest and appeal anything that we do on their claim. And so we are looking at stopping the overpayment letters so that we can make a determination about their claim on the overpayment issue. And we can, if we did pay them inappropriately and they were not eligible for that, we have the potential to waive that overpayment because it would be through no fault of their own that they received that payment. And so that is one of the things that we are working on right now so that we can make a determination about what we're going to do in terms of potentially waiving a claim and or working on the overpayment. Now, when somebody does get an overpayment, that's their initial notice and they can appeal it, but they also should be getting something else after that, but it would be 30 days before they were told that they had to start paying on that. And so within that time, they could potentially get another letter indicating you weren't eligible for PEUC, but you are potentially eligible for PUA, and you need to apply for that. So it's a very complicated system, and we know that folks are frustrated, but we also need to make sure that we notify people when there's activity on their claim so that they can protest and appeal it.
Okay, well, I just have a comment and another question. First off, it took like our office to get involved to take care of this issue. So they were not overpaid. They legitimately received what they were supposed to, and it was on UIA's problem that they thought that they should not have received those dollars. And then my question is, what happens when the UIA is at fault and overpays somebody, and then they request those dollars back? Do they have to pay with interest on those dollars?
If the overpayment is through no fault of their own, no. If they have misrepresented the information they gave to the agency, there is the potential that they would have to pay additional penalties and interest.
And how much is that interest? How much is that interest?
It can be from 1 to 4 times the amount that they were overpaid. But that's for misrepresentation, not overpayment.
Okay, thank you.
So just to piggyback off of that, my constituent relations director, who this has pretty much been his job, is dealing with unemployment this last year. He texted me just now. Just spoke with a constituent named Michelle. She owes $18,000 and was paid from March to December 2020. She just spoke with the UIA rep yesterday who told her, sorry, we didn't catch it sooner, but you have to pay it all back. The woman was sobbing. She never would have taken the benefits in the first place had she known this was going to happen. She would have been able to get by without them. Now the state has placed a bigger burden on the people that are already hurting financially. This is not just a one-off story. We hear this stuff every single day, not just my office, every single office. There's a gentleman here in the audience who's saying he has the same exact thing. With that, I'm going to go to Representative O'Malley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Olson, good to see you again. It's been amazing how this committee and on this date, people have reached out to me with questions. So I'm going to try to get to a couple of them here because I can't ask them all. You talk about fraud, and I was on the Joint COVID Oversight Committee this summer, and fraud was an issue then too. So I guess one of my first questions is, how can you let the people of the state of Michigan know, or what are you doing, maybe is a better question, when you find these people that are fraudsters? Do we put them in chains and throw them in jail? What are we doing?
Well, we have a fraud. Michigan is one of the few states that actually has a fraud investigation unit. And so all of those cases go before that fraud investigation unit. And as I showed you with the Crystal example, I mean, that's more than just one person. And so you have to look at every one of those claims. And, if there's ability for us to legally do something other than shut the claim down, Otherwise, we give that information to the other states that are impacted to determine if there's something that they can do. But in Michigan, if we determine, and there is a legal definition with regard to the word fraud. And so as we bandy around the word fraud, we have to be careful. So our folks, our regulation agents, you know, they work with law enforcement, they work with the U.S. attorneys, they work with the Attorney General's office to make determinations about meeting the requirements for fraud, which is a stronger standard.
So
And
can you,
when
do you
we're
have,
gonna, when we're gonna go after somebody for fraud, we have to meet that legal definition. And there are many cases that we are currently working on.
so how many have you actually been able to prosecute and come up to a, you know, an answer here, guilty or not guilty?
We have taken a number that have been arrested, and it's going through the process. The U.S. Attorney's Office is taking the lead on the current round of cases that we have. And so there's kind of a gradation based on the amount. The U.S. Attorney's Office is involved, the Attorney General's Office is involved, and local prosecutors can be involved depending on the amount that we are claiming is fraudulently having been absconded with.
Okay.
So we work with all of them. We do have a backlog in that area too, because you have to be able to cross your T's and dot your I's if you're going to try to penalize somebody in the legal system, as you know.
Sure.
And so that takes a much longer. And our first line of defense in fraud is if somebody is a victim of identity theft and is still trying to have a claim themselves, those are the first ones that we're trying to work on, because there is an actual person who is trying to receive benefits who has had identity theft.
Sure.
And so that's the first bucket that is our priority. And then the second priority is going after and collecting all the information we need on the fraudulent cases.
Well, there's a special place in the afterlife for these people that are fraud in the system.
I concur.
I got this question that I didn't really, I thought, I think they're exaggerating a little bit until I saw your chart. This gentleman and a couple of folks have claimed that when they go to the chat bot on the website and they type in their question, whatever the question is, all that comes up is call this phone number. And when I saw that your chats have handled only 12,000, I would think in the hundreds of thousands that you've gotten, 12,000 seems pretty light. And the reason I bring that up is because I remember early on Director Gray, when we told him that phone calls were being dropped, people couldn't get in, he said, oh no, that's not happening. So I guess my question to you is, are you sure that your chat box is really working? 12,000 seems awful thin.
So Representative, just to kind of go back to that slide, that was in reference to the number of chats that were handled in a specific week, to give you an example of the workload. So that when it said 12,000 chats, that was just
Fair enough.
Prior to the committee to do that. And just to be clear, there are two different chats that happen. There are chats that are done through live operators who can provide answers to things. Based on communication between two people. And then the second thing is that we have created Ava, the chatbot, which is on there to help answer kind of general and more simpler questions. It's an AI device that we use to help people get answers. And so oftentimes it can answer questions on how do I file a protest or different things like that that are more general. But if you asked Ava, for example, a specific thing about your case, you would oftentimes get, please call this number, because the AI technology isn't able to address specifics around a case. And so those are the two different kinds of chats that occur. And I don't know for sure, but I believe probably what's most likely to happen is if they asked Ava a specific question, they would have gotten that to allow them to talk to an actual person because their question was specific to their case, or at least Ava thought it was specific to their case.
Sure. And I know other questions, but I got a couple more here. Going back again in time, one of the things Director Gray said was, well, part of the problem we had was that we had to interface our system with the federal systems, and so people were lost. These people who, when we said, you know, they haven't gotten a check in 8 months or 8 weeks at the time, or 10 weeks or 12 weeks. Well, the two systems didn't talk to each other, and they fell in the cracks. And I'm just looking here. I have a couple of three. One gentleman, we filed some paperwork for them back in July and August, and this gentleman's owed $11,000, hasn't gotten anything. He applied in April, but we got involved in July. Another one in August, same type of thing, an issue, and another one where they filed in March, and we helped them out in August, and they're still waiting. So are they still falling in the cracks between the federal software and our software? I mean, we're at 10 months-ish since this all began. Why is this gentleman and these folks still waiting?
So Representative, I understand the frustration your constituents having, and I appreciate that, and we'll work hard to try and resolve that issue. I think there's a couple of different things in play in what you've mentioned. Going back to the former director's remarks, I think in terms of falling through the cracks, what he was speaking about was the system, the MIDAS system, which is the system that UIA, works within to process claims, collect taxes, and things like that, was a system that came in, prior to this administration. It was really focused on staying within federal compliance, which obviously is very important and something we take extremely seriously. At the same time, the focus was so much on compliance that it wasn't really orientated towards, are we moving people through the system in a way that gets them to a resolution, a determination to either determine that they are eligible and receive benefits, or make a determination that they're not. So at times there were people early on, because of that focus of the system on compliance and not resolution for constituents, that they were not moving along in the system. I think that's something that the agency worked on and is now kind of, in a better position to make sure that people continuously are moving through the system so we can get them to a resolution point. In terms of the disconnect that I think your office is dealing with, and all the legislative offices are, is what's called the Curtis system. So prior to the pandemic, if you had a UI case, basically you emailed it in, you filled out a PDF, that PDF got printed out and handed to a worker to work. Obviously, that was something when we had 5,000 total claims a week, was a system that we, as much as it wasn't very technologically savvy, could use to kind of process things coming in. When that jumped up to 390,000 a week, that system didn't work. So we created the Curtis system, which is an online portal that allows us to intake from offices information, get that to our CRT team, which is a special set of staff within UIA that work on legislator inquiries into cases. The Curtis system is better than what we had before, which was just a very fancy pen and paper, to be quite frank, system. But the issue is that Curtis is an add-on system that we built with our partners at DTMB to allow people to track their cases better, to let us be more efficient in our work. But it's not directly a part of MIDAS. We don't have a constituent services module as part of MIDAS. It's something that we've been in discussion with the vendor as we continue conversations about that relationship. We do update the Curtis system twice a week, but it is not integrated into the system, so to speak. And so sometimes there's a little bit of a lag in information flow. We're working to get better on that every day. And then but that's what it is. The Curtis system is something that isn't directly part of MIDAS. Hopefully as we have conversations on the next iterations of the UI technology backbone, we'll be in a position to make that a part of it and allow for better communication.
I guess, and you said something there that reminded me, and I don't have the information in front of me, so this is gonna be kind of a very light on facts, but I remember in an article I was reading and some facts that some other states, and I believe it was New York, was having a very similar situation, and they brought in some outside private vendors to help them with their software and their their situation. You mentioned DTMB, no disrespect to the department, but has your department, your agency gone outside the realm of government to say, hey, is there anybody out there who can help us figure this out?
We have had conversations with many vendors to see if they had a product that would enable us to do our work quicker, better, faster. Many of these groups have pieces of what we currently have, but none of them have the breadth of what our MIDAS system currently does, even with its faults. And so bringing in an additional vendor who already does something that our system currently does not expand our capabilities. It would probably create more problems because you've then got two systems versus one that you're working with. We have talked to a number of vendors. We do have vendors who are helping us with our fraud components. We're using Deloitte and McKinsey to help us with that work. And they spend a great deal of time trying to figure out what the next fraud scheme is so that we can stop it before it comes into our system. And so we appreciate their efforts on behalf of the state with that aspect. But we have a lot of companies who have pieces and parts of the MIDAS system. But if there was
so Director, we got to keep going. We have a lot of people that have questions here. So just to kind of, obviously there's a lot of issues here, and you're having conversations with outside vendors. You're deciding not to hire them. That's a discussion that I think has to happen. But there is a far simpler solution here. Why are your offices not open? Secretary of State's office has been open for appointments since May, I think for emergency appointments since March. And here's the thing, as a legislative body, we can and we have passed legislation saying, hey, if your driver's license expires, you're still good to drive on it. We can't pass legislation fixing the problems that you guys have caused here. So of all the offices that should be open, it should be yours. And yet here we are 1 year into this, and they're not open. Secretary of State's office open. They confirmed to us this morning not one outbreak has been tied to their offices. You know there's issues. Every one of us has multiple constituents with issues, and so many of them say, if I could just talk to someone there, if I could just show them my issue, I'm sure they could fix it in 5 minutes, but they can't. So why are your offices not open?
Our offices are not open because we are still in the COVID era. Our folks have not had the opportunity to be vaccinated. We are working with the general public, but the bigger issue is that we have 12 local offices across the state. Most of them have only a handful, literally 1 or 2 people who work in them. And so if something happened, that whole office would be shut down. The people who work in the local offices are our most experienced adjudicators, and they can do 15 cases a day in the office, maybe. If they are working remotely as they are now, they can do up to 40 cases of complex work.
How many people
right
do you have
now,
working on claims? I think
we
you said
believe those offices are not the best opportunity.
I believe you said that you bumped your number up to over 3,000 employees dealing with cases. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, what?
Did you guys bump your employees? I think you said you're over 3,000 people now handling cases.
Almost.
All right, and you have 12 offices. You can't start redeploying people to an office because someone gets COVID. You say, we're in the COVID time. Well, guess what? Secretary of State's office is in the same COVID time. There's no difference there. It makes absolutely zero sense that the one agency that needs to be open isn't open. It makes zero sense. There was a rumor at one point that the one in Grand Rapids was going to be open. And based off of that rumor, there is a line out the door several blocks down the road because so many people had issues. And somebody said if we could just get in. And look, Secretary of State's office isn't fully open. They're doing appointments. You could do the same thing. That's all people are looking for is can we just actually talk to someone and explain our situation? It just baffles my mind how everyone else is open except you guys.
Sure. Representative, again, I appreciate the frustration, something that we want to resolve for people and work through. In terms of the Secretary of State, there are certain transactions by law that they're required to do and have to do those transactions in person. in terms of the reassignment of staff, and I think that's a great question based on the numbers. One of the things that that COVID has allowed us to do is allow people to not be in the office and work. That allows us to staff up more quickly, allows us more access to a better workforce. And so these people who have been brought on to work, may not always be where these offices are at. And so rather than be restricted to just recruiting people around a specific area in regards to our office, we were able to staff up in a way and have them be on the phones and be adjudicators working through these cases in a way that it doesn't tie us or limit us to a physical presence.
I believe Rep. Hoytinga has a follow-up question.
Yeah, and I do appreciate the director coming on with the transparency. I truly do appreciate you guys coming on. I know this is not easy. I'm just curious because the things I'm hearing when some of these people are talking to your employees, they're hearing like dogs barking in the background or babies crying. So we know working from home is the thing, but how are these people getting training? If we've hired this mass amount of people, are they even getting adequate training if they're not in an office under a supervisor? Because just the one constituent I was telling you about, the employee admitted, and she was very, very kind to him. She showed compassion, but she said, all I can do is forward this up. There was nothing she could do to help him. She really gave the impression she wasn't fully trained. So I'm just curious how they're getting their training.
Their training is done online. They are done in groups so that they have the opportunity to ask questions. We use the team system so they can ask questions in the chat. And then once they have been through training, they are in a pod of 15 to 20 employees with a manager and a lead worker. And they have the ability to ask that manager and lead worker questions all day. So if they have a claimant on the call, on the phone, and they are quite sure what they need to do in terms of a piece of the case, they can go to their lead worker or their manager and ask for additional help. And they're normally the training is a longer, and so we're chunking it up so they learn able and available, those tend to be our easiest pieces. So they start with able and available, and as they get better at that, then we add additional training to allow them to do additional pieces of the work. They all start out on the phones, so they're talking to our claimants about how to file a claim, and they've been trained on that. We find that we do have some people, and we do have significant turnover on our phone system because we just have some people who don't have the thick enough skin to be yelled at all day. And so, we do have turnover, but we have anywhere from 1,100 to 1,400 people on the phones every day. And so they are getting trained.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And we
Representative
do
Young.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I'm so stuck on timelines. One question my staff wanted me to ask you all was when they put something in the Curtis system, what's the time period before the resident hears from your office? Because we're not clear about that, because the main thing we're trying to do are manage expectations, and it's just difficult because they're all over the place. So if you could help us understand when we put it in the system, now that it's made it to our offices, how soon before your office contacts the resident?
It depends.
Yeah, so no, I appreciate that, Representative, and I know that this is something that's come up. We have weekly calls with staff. We have one later on today at 4 o'clock where staff can join and ask questions, and that's something we get. So, we work the cases from oldest to newest in terms of the CRT system. The only difference in that is every office is allowed to escalate cases. So we know that these aren't just names and figures on a page. We know that they're real people, and so there are sometimes extenuating circumstances that people identified to your offices to show there's maybe a more dire need, and so we try to be respectful of that, and we try to be helpful to you and your constituents on that. And so it's oldest to newest, with the exception being any escalated cases that offices are entitled to do through the system to get help to those people who are in most dire straits. In terms of actual timing, Due to some of the things that Director Olson has pointed out, it's hard for me to give a specific date and time. Some cases, for example, some people who have lockouts, we get to those very quickly. Other cases, it takes us a little while longer to get to, especially when we get information from constituents in regards to identity verification, for example. We know that sometimes people say, hey, I've sent my information in. How come you haven't cleared me out? Sometimes it's because we need to let that constituent know that we need better copies of that, for example. Sometimes, and it's understandable, people get us copies that aren't readable, but having clear, very readable copies in terms of that information is something that's becoming more and more important for us in terms of being able to clear cases. So they do work from oldest to newest. In terms of a specific time frame, it depends on what's involved in the case. But we try to work through those as quickly as possible, especially on those most dire cases.
Good. Okay. Representative Outman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So while the department ignored the fraud manager system, I think it was from from March to May 27th, I believe. The report estimated about $1.5 million in fraudulent payments, $1 billion. Do you have a more updated number on the total amount of fraud that you guys have incurred at the agency?
We don't have that number, and I believe the number you're referring to is the volume of fraud cases that were being looked at. Not all of that was fraud. It was anything that was in one of the fraud queues and how much that claim might have been worth. So that number.
The number is that the Deloitte report reference refers to the total number of claims during that time period that you referenced, Representative, in terms of the issues with fraud manager. So that was a time and period in which the system was undergoing probably its highest exposure to potential fraud. But the 1.6 represents the total number of claims processed during that time. It isn't necessarily an indication of a specific fraud number. One of the things that the agency takes very seriously is making sure that, before we accuse someone of fraud, that, we've done our due diligence, especially with our partners in law enforcement. We want to make sure, just as every eligible person gets every dollar they're entitled to under the law, we want to make sure that we're able to do everything we can legally to recoup every dollar that might have been stolen from the system.
So do you have an actual updated number on the amount of actual fraud that you guys incurred?
Fraud on the system.
Do you have an updated actual number on the fraud?
I think the public comments that the agency's made before kind of stand still relevant.
It's a simple question. Do you have a ballpark number or not?
I think, Representative, I appreciate that question. And again, I think the public statements that we've made early on.
You're not going to answer the question. Okay, moving on. Representative LeGrand has a question.
I guess I have a follow-up question to Representative Outman's question, if you'll allow me a little indulgence. So, and Representative Outman, perhaps, I think I know where you were going, but I think maybe we need a little more precision, and that is, there's two possible numbers. One is how much people tried to steal, to put it crudely. The other is how many payments, what's the magnitude of payments that have gone out that we've now determined are fraudulent? In other words, how much money did someone steal? And that's a lot more important, I think, we'd agree, than how much somebody tried to steal, right? I could try to steal $2 trillion, but if I don't manage it, it doesn't really matter. So I would like an answer to the question of what is our current estimate of payments that have been made out that have been determined to be fraudulent? Is that, and I assume that's where you were going.
That's where I'm going with it as well. I just want an actual number, a realistic number.
Of what was taken, not what somebody tried to take.
Correct.
I think that I'm going to repeat the question if it's okay, because I think we had a little bit of trouble there with Representative LeGrand.
Yeah,
I think the question was back to the ability of the agency at this time to give a specific number on fraud regarding money rather than cases. Is that, I want to make sure that's clear.
Exactly. And look, I get that the number will never maybe be precise, but I'd like to know parameters. I mean, if you've lost about $100 million, then you're not going to tell me 10. If we've had $1 billion stolen, you're not gonna say 100 million. So could you even give us within, the nearest $10 million, what your current estimate is on how much money has been fraudulently gotten by these fraudsters from the state of Michigan? That's, I think, a relevant question for the public. And I'm sorry about my mask interference, and I will happily repeat questions. I'm trying to take COVID very seriously, and I would love to get a vaccine.
Sure. No, it's understandable, Representative. I think we're all trying to do our best to work through the conditions that we have to do under the circumstances in the world today. So I understand that. I just want to be as helpful as we can in terms of this process. Again, because a lot of these investigations are ongoing, it's hard to do that. What the agency has said publicly is that the likelihood this is in hundreds of millions of dollars.
Okay.
In terms of a specific dollar amount, that will, as we work through these claims and we work through our partners in law enforcement, we'll be able to have more dialogue about that. But that's kind of where we are right now, and certainly, again, are pursuing every effort to ensure that every dollar that may have been stolen is recovered, and everyone who has tried to defraud the system is held accountable.
Great. And given that we're the Oversight Committee, I would ask, and if this is not possible, please tell me, but I would love it if you would give us at least a monthly report as to your current best estimate, if this is an ongoing investigation, so that this committee can be apprised of that number as you move forward. Is that something you could do? At least give us your best information monthly.
I think that's something that I'll have to ask the fraud task force and get some guidance from them. I think one of the things that we want to be careful on is as we're announcing numbers, and we want to be very clear that we're not, we want to provide information as we're trying to do here in this committee hearing, but we also want to make sure that we're not tipping off fraudsters and making it harder for us to either recruit dollars or prosecute folks. But we can certainly talk to our partners in the Attorney General's fraud team and see if there's a way that we can have information flow on that.
Got it. I have a hard time seeing, to use the bank robbing analogy, I have a hard time seeing that announcing how much money got stolen from a bank puts the bank at any further, at a accelerated risk that they'd have future theft. But
I think it's a very fair request by Rep. LeGrand there.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, can I have one more question? Because I had another issue, but I was
Under
just,
10 seconds.
Okay. Very quickly, Director, you said that you talked to the governor when necessary. I appreciate that. I would ask you if you would possibly either ask the governor or whoever in her team allocating vaccines, if you could get your staff prioritized for vaccination as a follow-up to the chairman's questions about expeditiously getting your branches reopened. I understand getting your staff vaccinated is a barrier, but if you can arrange, sorry,
You're over your 10 seconds.
Yeah, if you could get rid of that barrier or ask for a prioritization of vaccination of your staff so we could reopen in-site facilities, I think that would be very, very helpful. So,
All right, that's a good comment there. So I want to move real briefly here because we're getting towards the end of our committee here. The biggest issue we're seeing right now is when it comes to tax returns. We got a lot of constituents getting 1099-Gs saying, hey, you received unemployment benefits, you need to pay taxes. And they're saying, what are you talking about? I was never unemployed, I never received anything. I just want to go back this morning, actually. My cousin texted me, all right? Not a constituent of mine, but back almost a year ago, he texts me and he says, someone filed for unemployment in my name somehow. Just got the letters in the mail today. I tried calling the state twice to report fraud, and they say the office is not accepting calls right now. Crazy stuff going on, all right? Then I text him back, hey, make sure you call the hotline. He says the general line. He called. He clicked 3 to report the fraud, like it says, and then all it said was the office is currently closed and hung up. We submitted a report on his behalf. Nothing really ever happened. I reached back out to him, said, hey, what have you heard? And he said he said he tried calling them multiple times, could never get a hold of them. They eventually left him a voicemail after weeks and weeks of trying, and they told him it was resolved. And so he said, all right, good. And he's a public school teacher, all right, just an average citizen. Then he texts me this morning, says, hey, I got something in the mail today from UIA, a 1099-G. So he tried to do everything right. He tried to call you guys, couldn't. Eventually, you guys said, hey, we cleared up the situation. You're good to go. All right, thank goodness I can move on with my life. And now here he is getting a letter saying, yep, you're going to owe taxes. And now he can go through this whole thing. And he's not the only one. Let me assure you, this is a huge issue right now as people are filing their taxes. This is going to be a major issue. So I guess my first question is going to be, when you guys send out these 1099-Gs, a lot of them are undeliverable because they're fake addresses. What do you do with those that are delivered back to you as undeliverable?
They are opened and put into the system so that they show in FileNet as being returned to the agency.
Do you try to figure out who that person was? Because there is a person there, and they're going to have this on their taxes that they're going to have to pay. So all you're doing is taking it back and just filing. Well, some average citizen out there now has a huge tax bill. And they're going to have, I mean, at least with my cousin, he got it in the mail, so he actually knows. There's a lot of people that have no idea until they go to return their taxes. They're expecting to get a refund back, and instead they're told, no, you owe the state money.
So I think that in the director's remarks, she mentioned in the fact that we had discussions with the IRS to give us more flexibility on the timing that to resolve more identity theft cases. The IRS decided not to do that. And again, said that if we didn't issue these out on time, we'd be subject to a $1,000 per increment fine. So as a part of all those 1099-Gs that were generated by the UI system, there was information on there that we included that said if you believe you were receiving this in error due to identity theft, and pointed out the steps. As the director put in her presentation, the IRS has also had more information on what claimants should do. At the top of our website with UIA, there's additional information if people have received the 1099-G form as a part of identity theft, the steps that they should take in terms of that process. We also refer them to the IRS because this is a national issue, unfortunately. But again, everyone who got a 1099-G form also got additional information that said, if you are receiving this and you believe it's an error due to identity theft, here are the things that you need to do. We continue to have that available. We know that's a concern to folks. But the reason they're also getting those 1099-G forms is, as the director has indicated, we haven't had a chance to clear out the fraud case all the way through. And once we're able to do that, we'll take the appropriate steps. But there's information both from the state of Michigan and on the IRS website that are available for people to take direction on that should they have gotten that as a part of their identity theft issue.
Okay, we are past our time, which is unfortunate because we still have a lot of questions here. I don't believe this is going to be the last time we touch this issue. I am in full disclosure, I am in discussions with Chairman Van Workum, who chairs the General Government Committee for Appropriations, which UIA is under, as well as Chair Marino of the Commerce Committee and Chair Griffin of the Workforce Committee on focusing, possibly putting together a UIA task force to really look at a lot of these issues because there needs to be some major structural changes. So we are having those discussions. Seeing no further business before the committee, we are adjourned.